Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. And this is The Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast.
This podcast is all about taking action and creating that badass business abundance and life that you want.
Where we share stories, laughs, wins, and epic fails to show you the whole picture of the entrepreneurial journey.
It's not just unicorns and rainbows, people.
Jump on and follow us through this raw and witty roller coaster,
where we get down and dirty and go behind the scenes of life and entrepreneurship.
Get on it,
get over it,
and get after it.
Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. Welcome to The Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast. Lynn, we are talking about something today that it's a question we've had to answer a lot in the last couple of weeks. And I think that comes down to, how do we get it all done? How is it possible to get as many things as we are doing done in the short amount of time that we're doing it? What does that boil down to, Lynn?
It can be multitasking, it can be productivity, it can be efficiency. So we're going to kind of talk about all of them interchangeably and individually here. But since short podcast, we're only going to be able to get into the wee little bit. So I am super excited. Actually, I would say it's not the last few weeks. I know for myself, like, people have always been like, how the hell do you get everything done? And not just like staying busy, which you know how much we hate that word, which I have a funny thing about that, but getting actually things done. This last week, I don't know if you saw, Amanda, but I posted a post about it was kind of a follow-up to something I posted at the beginning of July. And I know you're probably listening to this in many months, and it's now August that we're recording it. But I posted something about the goals, mid-year goals check-in. And then 2-3 weeks later, I posted about all the things that essentially we've accomplished. And it was just high-level items. And there was, I don't know, probably about 10, 11. And somebody made a comment about like, dang, you sure were busy. And I was like, well, actually, I don't use that term. I was productive. I was efficient. I got things done. I was able to stay organized. Like, I was able to multitask in many ways. So yeah, it's really interesting how when we, especially us, I've seen, like, when we set our mind to it, how much we can get done for the right things and the right reasons, because I think that that's a huge difference between like people just kind of fumbling through and not getting things done, and multitasking just for the sake of multitasking, actually being able to accomplish, create, check things off of their list in a good way too, not in a I'll just brush that one under the rug type of the way.
No, I absolutely agree. It's funny because I have to bring up my mother. My mother always looks at me like I'm insane. The amount of things that I'll be like, oh, I'm doing blah, 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 blah. And I'll like list off, just sort of like in a morning call with her. And she'd be like, are you okay? You just seem stressed. I'm like, I'm fine. Like, this is just me talking about what I'm going to do in the next hour. She will get blown away. She's like, I wouldn't do that in a month. And you're going to do that in like the next 3 hours that your kid's at school. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to do all these things. And so when people ask me like, oh, it's always funny when people ask me like, what is it that you do again? I'm like, what? That's a loaded question. I do a lot of things. For example, today I did XYZ. So I think a lot of people have that question of, number one, am I actually doing all the things that I say that I'm doing? Because how could you possibly? And that's actually, you're right. This has been a theme for my whole life, because people often ask me, how is it that you did all these things while you were in school, while you were working, while you had this job? And the answer is that they're all simultaneously overlapping in different fashions. And it's not to say, and I know there's this stigma about multitasking actually being less efficient than real, just focusing on an item. And we've talked about this in the book, because I don't really multitask in the way that I think a lot of people think multitasking is done. I'm not doing multiple things at the same time generally, though I do. I mean, I know your face generally, but like, for example, like, yes, I do other things while I'm on hold, and yes, I'm often on a call while I'm also like making dinner, or, I'm playing snakes and listening to a conference call at the same time. There are lots of things that I do at the same time. And I also work on hyper focusing when I'm focusing. So if I know I have a project that I only have a limited amount of time to work on, I hyper focus. I don't get distracted. I don't fall down the Instagram rabbit hole. And the second that I start to, I pull myself out of it really quickly because I know I have to be efficient in order to get things done. And I think that's a really important part of efficiency, is being able to pull out, recognize those distractions, pull away from them as soon as you can, and then hyper focus on activities or on certain assignments while you can. And that allows you to get more done in less time because you aren't flitting about in your brain thinking about 50 other things. You are hyper focused on that one thing. And yes, you can get multiple things done in a day and sometimes seemingly at the same time, but you are also hyper focused on those each individual items.
I 100% agree with you. The reason why I was laughing is because every time we get on the call, all the tabs you have open.
Hey, those tabs are efficient. And you know what? The funny thing is, I actually was on a conference call with a client, and I was sharing screen. I had to share screen with him for a second. I'm like, don't be alarmed by the amount of tabs. And I opened it up and he's like, oh my God, like, why do you have so many tabs open? I'm like, actually, this is better because I have a whole separate document that documents which tabs are open on which days, because sometimes there's too many and I can't, like, I used to have 3 screens. And so I would have them across 3 screens, but now I only have 1 screen. And so I have to have these documents that show which tabs are open on what days. And I have to go back, and it's a whole system. But yes, I do have an alarming amount of tabs open all at once. It makes sense.
Yeah,
in my head too. The tabs are always open.
But I think I think that is a great point, because we all have to find our own rhythm. There's lots of books and like advice and different things out there about like how to be. And really, there is a difference between productivity and efficiency. I think that, they can go one of the same. However, productivity is getting more done, right? But it should be the right work for the right reasons. Efficiency is getting the same amount in less time. So like, how can you be as efficient as possible? And that's why we kind of coupled this with multitasking, because they can dance well together. We'll say they're all in the classical music kind of genre, if we would. Like,
yes.
One's not pop, one's not country, they're all in the classical music. But what I was getting to is that system works for you. And I think that it's really important because you said something really important there too, is that you have found your own way and you hyper focus. So even though you have all of those tabs open, which gives me hives when I think about it, and it would distract me, which is quite funny because you're so OCD too. So
no.
But with that being said, I do understand, because then you don't have to click between. You don't have to like Google and find the different things and like find it open, because that works for you in your rhythm and you're able to hyper focus and you're streamlined in the way that you do things. Could somebody else have a different way of doing it more effectively and more, whatever? Yes, somebody could, for them and possibly other people. However, I think it's really finding the ways that you can kind of, and we will talk about refocusing and distractions, but get rid of the distractions and hyper focus on a goal or on the action steps that are going to get you to the goal in which you want to accomplish. I definitely multitask, and there's a couple of things that I've learned about this over the years. One, I realized that part of me multitask because I had a lot of chatter in my brain. And so I would like listen to something and be able to do something. I don't do it as much now. Every once in a while I need to do it. But now I don't know if I've trained myself or I've just gotten old enough that I can't do as many things at once. I don't know what it is. But there was a time where the mind chatter was so loud that I needed to play a radio or play music and have, something open up over here. So that way I can really focus on the task at hand. I just really feel like multitasking, I would say the same. I'm not like the traditional multitasker. I can do multiple things at once. However, I do appreciate the efficiency of the hyper focus of really being able to focus on this particular project. And then what I like to do is like what flows into that nicely, right? So that way, if I'm transitioning between projects or between different things that we're checking off the list, how can we flow nicely into that, right? So for example, we've recorded, I don't know how many podcasts in a week. We recorded, I think 9 in a week podcasts. Well, we had X amount of time set aside. We knew that we were going to do X amount, so many a day. And if I was going to do another podcast or another recording, because I'm already dressed, I'm already ready, my lighting's done, etc., then I would have tried to bucket it right after the time that we're recording our podcast, right? So even though I'm getting our stuff done, I'm flowing right into the next. So finding ways where you can flow into the next said project easy or task easier without disruption. Actually, I'll give you an outside example. I have clients, longtime clients that own a contracting company. And one of the things that we spoke about a lot is because they were moving the guys around to the different jobs. Well, the guys have to break down their tools, then, they have to like lay everything out, they get things done in there. Even if the house was like next door, like there is time breaking up and setting down the tools. So instead, like, how can we maneuver them within that one house and have them do different functions and then accomplish everything that needs to get done? So it's like multiple things are happening at once. So that way they don't have to keep coming back to that house, break down, and then, set back up, set up and break down, set up and break down kind of thing. So it's really like trying to figure out if you can find a flow between your tasks, and bento box them or time chunk them, like we love to do. And that's a whole other topic, but, that way you can stay hyper focused in what you're doing.
I agree. That's one of the reasons why I really like batching so much, because I feel like from day to day, I know that I have a lot of different tasks to get done over the course of a day for myself, for my clients, for just life. And so I really like to throw everything that's similar in the same day in the same set of hours, because it's easier to flow from one similar project to one similar project than it is to go from like on camera 1 minute to deep into a writing assignment the next minute and then meeting with a client. It's for me, it's too disjointed to create a full flow. So I like to batch things together. So like, for example, today I was editing audio and working on social media stuff. So I had 3 hours of chunked time where I worked on all of my clients' social media. So my social media, I have 3 or 4 different clients whose social media I'm working on right now. So I just did everything social media for those 3 hours. And then I did a couple of hours of just audio edits for this podcast, for audiobook stuff, for some other podcast stuff I'm working on for another client. So all of that audio edit stuff took place at the same time. So I was in Final Cut, I was doing all the stuff, and I didn't have to really switch programs or switch mindsets or switch gears. And really the only downside of that was that at the end of it, I stood up and I'm like, oh, I'm too old to be sitting that long. I should have gotten up. For 5 minutes. I'm dehydrated and now my hips hurt. I'm old. I got to get up.
I think that brings up another good point. Actually, several things in here is that, and then we'll probably need to start giving some takeaways, but is that you should, when you're multitasking, and this is something that we'll probably go to more in the time batching thing. I do love a good time batch, is that you do need to get up and stretch. You do need to get a break and allow your brain to be able to just kind of calm for a second, because that will help you be more proactive and more productive and more efficient. The other thing is like setting a timer for yourself too, like when you're multitasking, so that way, because that helps with hyper focusing, because a lot of times people are too distracted on like how much more time they have, how much time has it been, right? When you set a timer, you don't have to worry about it. You know that you are hyper focusing on X for X amount of time, etc. I think that those 2 things are really important that I would add to that as well.
Absolutely. I love setting time limits, not just because it makes me focus, but it also takes away some of that guilt if I don't get something done, because the to-do list is very, very long and it's never going to go away. And I hope it never does. But things like even something as mundane as checking your email, if I give myself a very finite amount of time, I'm only going to work on this email for 15 minutes. And if I don't get through everything and I still have, messages in my inbox, I don't feel bad about leaving them because I met that time limit and I have to move on to something else because I do have a schedule to keep. So it's not that I ignore them and never look at them again. It's just, it gives me permission to look at them again later and to go back to it, knowing that I have made progress. And it may not be to the extent I want, but if I have more important things or more pressing things on my list, those are the things that need to take priority. So it gives me the permission to step away from something, even if it's something that my OCD wants me to finish because, I only have like 4 more to go and my OCD gets me. But knowing that I'm sticking to that time schedule for the greater good of my day and productivity allows me to let go of some of that guilt and the perfectionist need to finish a project all the way through every single time.
Absolutely. I have a few more things to add here. First of all is, and if you've been listening to our podcast, Amanda and I love what we do and we love to work. We really do. Not all of the parts of our work do we love, but I was just having this conversation the other day. Like I love what we do and I love being in it. And I prefer not to necessarily stay idle. That's my choice. Whatever your choice is your choice. And I was just on a podcast about this as a guest speaker. And she brought up the question and she was like, yeah, I'd love to stay home with my 4-year-old. Like I only work 25 hours a week. And you know what? There was a point where I was doing that when I had kids at home and I really made it. And those 25 hours though were uber productive and efficient.
Yes.
And I had so much more time to be able to like be there for my kids, etc. But that was the season that I was in. And now I'm in the season of like hyper focus, head down, like, and I know you're in the same way, like we're building this empire or empires because we have other businesses. The other thing is to be, when you are multitasking and the whole efficiency pregnancy thing. Whew, nope. Neither one of us.
Calm down. Whoa. Calm down. No.
Productivity thing. Jeez Louise, where'd that one come from? Anyway.
No place good.
That was good. Is to know your own flow. And it's not just women who have a flow. And I mean this, yes. I mean this like health-wise too, like natural flow. Men have it as well. And there are going to be moments in the day that you are more proactive and more productive and just clear in mind. There's going to be times in the week and there's going to be times in the month. And when you can start tracking like when your creativity is, when you need to like kind of dial it down, when you're like the most like angst and you can accomplish a lot of things, this will really help with your multitasking or your productivity, your efficiency. And I guess the last thing that I would add is like, you have to be you. Like this is Amanda and I, and we actually enjoy it. And again, we aren't necessarily the typical multitaskers like what you see other places. We will hyper focus and we're really quick at the things that we do. However, multitasking has definitely got a bad rap and people are like, oh, you're just doing busy work. Well, yeah, if you're doing busy work and you're just kind of bullshitting through the day, obviously you have the multitasking and you're not getting things done at a quality that it should be, then you do need to relook at that. Maybe you aren't focusing enough. But you have to define what is getting you towards your goals, what feels good in your rhythm and flow, and how you operate to be proactive, to be productive, to be efficient. And if that is a type of multitasking, then great. If that is not multitasking at all, then that's okay too. Like you have to figure it out yourself. What I will say though, is for those of you that are listening, is just really try to find the flow so you don't have the abrupt starts and stops, because so think of the contractor example, regardless if you're multitasking or if you're doing task after task after task, then you want to avoid the hard stops, the hard starts, because it takes more energy to get the ball rolling.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you mentioned the flow, because I think one of the things that I've had to learn over the years is really to understand that there is a time I'm going to be more or less productive. And yes, anybody can push through anything. I mean, obviously you can push through that feeling, but I have found that I am 1,000% more productive if I truly listen to what my body is saying. So sometimes my body is going to be like, no, it's 7:30 and you are exhausted. I know you can stay up to 1 o'clock in the morning to do whatever project, or you can go to sleep and be a dynamite the next day. And you have to kind of listen to yourself. Or, for me, a lot of times I only have like 9 solid hours of child-free work during the daylight hours during the week. So I have to really be focused in those 9 hours. So I allow myself, once I drop him off at school, to have half an hour to just drink coffee and be in the silence, in this like glorious silence, knowing that, yes, it's unproductive to waste those 30 minutes, but it's so much better for my mental energy to clear my headspace. And then I am way more productive. If I go right through it, I never get as much done. And so I allow myself, and knowing that about myself can really change that productivity. And so it's knowing that flow and knowing how it changes, and listening to yourself and allowing yourself and forgiving yourself if you actually have to take a break or change something up, what you consider to be more or less productive. It really helps to listen to yourself.
Absolutely. I love, you said something, and I remember a quote that just because you can doesn't mean you have to. And I think that that's really important to leave on. So I would suggest for your go-to is to just really kind of watch like where you're at in your week. I love time tracking. So figure out like, okay, where are things feeling bottlenecked, where things like falling through, because also multitasking, like the amount of things on mine and Amanda's to-do lists differ from each other, and they'll differ from you. So I'm an advocate of like, what's my top 3 things that I have to get done today, even though I have a master list. I think, Amanda, you do somewhat the same thing too. Mm-hmm. And even though we might have little sub things, but anyway, digressing. The task I would say is take a look at what you have like moving forward, or you can go backwards, both will work, and to see, okay, where can I flow better to be more efficient, to actually feel like I'm accomplishing things. Because that's another thing. Like if you're not taking the time to see the accomplishments, it can feel like you're just always in this hamster wheel. And then also, like Amanda said, and I'm so proud of you for saying that, the half-hour coffee breaks, because I am good about that too, for several reasons. I take time off in the middle of the day. Like that's why I have my own business, right? Or I take a day off or whatever. But finding that space where you can replenish into you, because the more that you fill your own cup, the more that you're going to be able to show up in said multitasking or whatever.
Yes. And my one action item for all of you is, and I know it sounds like it might take more time, not less, but make a plan. I always without fail, the night before, I make a list of my top 3 things that I want to get done, and preferably in the order that I want to get them done, so that I know when I wake up, I don't get scatterbrained or distracted of the millions of other things I have to do. And even if I do other things, I know that those are my top 3. I go back to my list, like, oh, that's right, I'm supposed to be doing, this is what I'm focusing on today, and giving myself that task list that I can focus on, even if I only have 10 minutes, even if it's like, okay, I've got my kid today, but he's going to eat his lunch. So I know I'm going to have 15 solid minutes of relative quiet where I can focus on that one project again. So really making that list for myself and making myself accountable for something every single day. I make a list of something I have to get done the next day.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Until next time, let's get after it. All right, everyone. It's not enough to just listen.
Now you've got to put it into action.
We are so excited to see what you do next.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review on iTunes.
And to find out more about what we're doing, visit us at thepursuitofbadasserie.com.